Um, yeah, thank you, Kristen and Tides Institute for having me. The last 4 weeks, it's been great, as you mentioned, of like, oh no, will this get postponed again? And it's been great to have Mollye as a studio mate. And yeah, and just kind of getting my hands move again after this weird 2020 year. So a little bit about me. I'm currently based in New York City, where I have my studio practice and I teach jewelry and sculpture classes at various schools within the city. I'm traditionally trained as a jeweler and metalsmith, but work across disciplines and materials and create wearables, wearable jewelry, sculptures, installations, and participatory projects. At the core of my practice is using materials and objects to navigate kind of ideas of, I think, preciousness, value, and memory. So right here, this image, it's a screen grab of my website. Wait, yeah. And so this is just like a snapshot of some of the stuff that I've made previously. And again, you know, some of it is sculpture, some of it is like this sculptural jewelry, kind of blending between the two. Some of it's more wearable jewelry, participatory installations, and just like objects, etc. For time's sake, I'm just going to talk about two of these that I would say I think most influenced the work here in some shape or another. And then I'm going to talk about kind of a few inspiration images from just Eastport in general, and then some of the install shots I've been doing here. So the first project I want to talk about is called Workshop 2016 to Ongoing. It's a participatory project. It takes influence from the ideas of a workshop, like a space for studio and both educational purposes, where visitors can kind of engage and interact and kind of build the installation with me, excuse me. So I invite visitors or, you know, people who visit the gallery to make these gemstone pendants with me and, you know, together alongside me. And so this is kind of just a view of like this workshop kind of atmosphere within the gallery. It started in 2016 as a public program during a residency I did at the Museum of Art and Design in New York, and then kind of evolved into this ongoing installation and kind of, I'll go to the next one. So this is a close-up of maybe some more of the objects and pendants that people make. But it kind of evolved into this installation that kind of travels and where other people host this installation and project. So sometimes it's like a weekend project, sometimes it's a week-long project, or some galleries or shows just show the finished pieces like this right here. So it takes different iterations. To start, you know, I created these 3D printed stamps of these like icon or archetypal kind of jewelry or gemstone shapes. And, you know, we use these in combination of like press molding techniques and basic plaster casting to kind of create these pendants, I call them. So I basically become like this artist in residence or this in residence in the gallery or whoever hosts this project. And so I'm kind of there on like a normal schedule. And when people visit and if they want to participate, you know, I kind of ask to kind of reflect on jewelry or adornment from their personal lives as inspiration in, you know, creating and recreating it, and most likely, you know, recreating the memory of it. And so basically they take these stamps and kind of press and create these molds out of these like clay slabs. And then throughout the day or after every day, I pour plaster into it and hang them up into the installation, into the gallery. So it kind of evolves over the course of the week or weekend. You know, as a public project, I'm interested in exploring the collaborative agency of adornment. You know, thinking about jewelry as like a social object. It's already, you know, it's already so public and out there, and it's steeped within this memory, and exploring that also through the act of making, which is also like the social object and or social kind of practice, and historically it's been like this social workshop kind of atmosphere. So kind of blending those two. Okay. Next is a project called Impressions, which was a project from 2017. During a residency, I did the Queen Council on the Arts at this Hanak Senior Center in Astoria, Queens. And we used basic silicone mold making techniques, and we made molds of these objects or possessions that the residents at the Senior Center brought in with them, and I kind of recreated them into clay and into these clay tiles. I initially wanted and proposed it to be like this more permanent site-specific tile kind of installation of these objects and from the residents, but as it goes, building codes in New York City are quite strict, and they were renting their building, so it didn't really work out that way. So then, Maria, for instance, made these two tiles, and she got to keep them, or they traded with participants. And the project kind of explores memory, relationships to objects, and kind of storytelling with how they layered their objects, or all these different molds and clay kind of imprints or impressions from the molds into these like tile specific kind of shapes. As a collective group, it kind of became the snapshot of the Senior Center or the community, but told through objects. So the final installation after the residency kind of was this collective kind of storyline, or so those are some of the molds. Sorry, I'm not good at clicking and talking at the same time, I guess. This is one of the participants kind of making his clay tile from the different molds ahead, and kind of almost mosaic or collaging them together, these different clay elements. So again, it kind of also blended this almost workshop kind of environment, and then also through like a very specific project. So this is my current studio, in an extra bedroom I have in an apartment in New York City. I moved there just before the pandemic, so I kind of spent the first month kind of organizing it, thinking, oh, this is great, I'll have all this time to use it and make all this work, but then had months and months of no momentum and no energy. So yeah, again, it's been great to kind of use this time to kind of get my hands moving again, working and thinking, and yeah. So in Eastport, like when looking at the museum archives, or just also the great thing about being in residence here is you have access to all the archives in the museum building. I think these two photos specifically really jumped out initially and keep coming back. I'm interested in like kind of the ideas of production, kind of this invisible or hidden labor. I like these, like this quantity of like tin cans or sardine cans. These they're almost like molds, visually, and like layering and quantities, like a big part of my own process aesthetically, and how I build things and construct things, my installations. So I feel like these two images, I think, really were a good like starting point, or like a inspiration starting point for me. I'm also was fascinated about all these like buoys around town. It kind of, aesthetically, the patterns, the colors, the shapes. But then they kind of just also remind me of jewelry. Like there's the kind of language to them, or this communication, symbolizing territory, symbolizing kind of this power or status even, so they kind of almost remind me of these like pins or brooches, or that reflect also these ideas. And then textures and some of the more architectural elements around the city were also a lot of inspiration for the work I did. So with starting with some of the work I actually made here, these are, I started thinking about, again, tin and aluminum. So I have this industrial kind of aluminum sheet. And, I started kind of making molds of objects from the archives here at Tides, and also objects around the city and architecture around the city as well. And kind of created these, these thin kind of almost like imitating like graphite rubbings, or also using kind of these like metal smithing, chasing, or repoussé techniques to kind of create these, to push the material into these the detail shapes and patterns and stuff. So they kind of became this like these molds for me, or also just like samples. Oops. So with them, I started kind of constructing these panels with them. So these are about like, I'd say like 10 inches by like 13 inches or so. So I started constructing these like aluminum sheets in different compositions, and kind of working with them like in the reverse. So kind of thinking, again, like it's a mold, so you're thinking subtractively, and it's kind of this back and forth of, what you pour, this plaster that I use, I pour it into this mold, which it would be the positive. So you're kind of, it's this oscillating between the positive and negative space. And material wise, it's the ceramic cal what I use, which is like a gypsum mixed with cement. So it's like more structurally sound plaster. And I also, I stain them with pigments, various pigments and stains, to so the entire body, or then this entire panel is this one solid color. So you kind of see these different kind of elements and kind of hints of objects, kind of composed together. And then, so these ones are kind of hung like paintings. So when I cast these, I also kind of inset these, this hardware to kind of string gallery wire or hanging wire on the back. So when they solidify or dry, it also kind of captures, it captures the hardware to kind of trap everything. And so these ones are kind of constructed in a way where I pour one material and then I kind of start to layer them with these different pigments and different inks. So kind of done in stages or in like layers, which is how they're arranged. There's different depths throughout the entire panel. So then I started thinking about, kind of insetting them in the entire kind of keeping the plaster, but also keeping the aluminum, and kind of creating these like larger shapes with like these negative and positive. And, thinking about kind of these like buoy or kind of maritime kind of shapes I've been looking at. The color choice is a lot of like pastels or these like unsaturated colors, which has been a big influence, like with like these foggy mornings I really love, or just these the weathered paint around Eastport. So it's a lot of these like undersaturated tones as well. So you kind of see these like glimpse of the objects or parts of them. And obviously like the aluminum kind of references the canning, the sardine industry, but also, it kind of reminds me of the reflection. It's kind of like light in the water, or the ripples in the water. There's kind of this movement to them. And then these are just kind of more like, so I used like a lot of like mesh, and then kind of painted it and coated it with the ceramic cal or the plaster, and kind of created these like backdrops or environments for the shapes. And so a lot of these, I work with components. I work like modularly. So a lot of these are kind of sketches for installations or sketches for other works, and kind of they become like this library of maybe possibilities to how to install them in a future show. So some of them, like they'll never like be like this. Some of them I'll kind of remember that format or this like kind of way of installing them and show them like that. And again, like I work probably from the jeweler or the metalsmith in me, I work kind of in components. And so I rearrange a lot and kind of react to the space in different shows. So sometimes this piece would be situated differently in different spaces, for instance. So kind of going back, so all these images have been in kind of chronological order, you know, kind of going back and just thinking about the tin again and just leaving out the ceramic cowl and thinking of arrangements, sorry, with that, and kind of pinning those to the wall. And then kind of combining them again. So maybe I don't have any of those details. I'm sorry about that. And then towards the end, I started kind of layering them again, thinking about that initial photograph. And kind of creating these sprawling kind of environments. And I think that's it, actually. Cal kind of really captures the texture and those intricacies of the objects and the aluminum textures. So in person, they're definitely something else versus, you know, some of these unedited photos. So that's all I have. So that's what I've been working on during these 4 weeks. And luckily I have a couple other residencies situated for the fall. So I'll kind of keep working on these ideas and they'll kind of evolve into different things as well.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Mollye Bendell, and I focused my residency on a sort of research project looking into the Quoddy Tides newspaper, which I was as like a lifelong, I have a lifelong interest in local media and in local news. Like I'm very much like a local news fiend, you know, so like when I was researching this area and I sort of started reading about the Quoddy Tides as being this extremely robust local newspaper, I was really interested in that and I really wanted to look deeper into it. So, I mean, I'll talk about that hopefully as in depth as I can. So a little bit about me. I guess I will hit this share screen button now. All right. So a little bit about me. Like Kristen said, I'm from Baltimore. I live and work in Baltimore, Maryland. And I'm an artist who is really sort of interested in the line between digital and analog work. So I do a lot of work with electronic media, with sort of building my own electronics or with something more computer science-y, like augmented reality or virtual reality. But I really use those things because I'm really, really interested in sort of finding the human in those places. Sorry? Oh, never mind. That's not for me. So So a lot of my work is really like sort of like looking for that kind of emotional kernel in something that might be more highly technical. So, you know, this was a piece, the piece that we're looking at now called Sketch for Sleepers. This is probably the most recent piece I've done that isn't the Quaddy Tides project. So this is a sort of a beginning of what I hope is going to be a longer study on the idea of people sleeping, but it's really just a knee-jerk response to the pandemic and to infinite Zoom calls. So this is a video piece that is a sort of series of people sleeping, of silhouettes sleeping, and they're all wearing masks, and the masks have all been taken from my friends as I see them on Zoom calls. And it's all tied in with my anxiety, especially in the first part of the pandemic when like nobody really knew what we were. I mean, we still don't know. We've just gotten more comfortable with not knowing, you know. But when we were all very uncomfortable with not knowing what was going to happen during the pandemic, and like my real panic that you know, the last time I saw somebody might be on Zoom, you know, like what if like my last like look at somebody was like on this sort of pixelated Baroque impressionist video call. So you can, you know, this is almost like me finding a way to watch my friends like sleeping peacefully and in a way where I'm like keeping them in an environment where I know that they're safe. So that's probably my most recent piece, and that's a video piece that's currently on view at the Baltimore Museum of Art online screening room. Another piece I wanted to show, just because it shows a little bit about how I got into digital media and especially into VR, is this piece I did called Wander Wonder. And oh, I'm clearly just paging through my website here. So this was a piece I did that's sort of, and I wanted to show it because it sort of got me into using digital media in like a more sociological way, in a way of like thinking about using digital media as a way to really look more closely at the world around me. So this is a piece that I did that's actually bifurcated. So all of the maybe more the prettier images are from one part of the piece. And the way it works is a participant puts on the VR headset, and they use this crystal ball, which of course I still have, to navigate through two separate but connected environments. So when spectators are looking at this piece, they're seeing all of the psychic readers of Baltimore City, which were a constant source of fascination to me. And the person who is navigating, they're blind to this sort of spectator experience, but they're experiencing this kind of fly through digital astral plane. And a lot of that is, I mean, these are all sort of hand-drawn textures that are applied to 3D elements. And you can sort of like fly through it. And so as you're flying through it, you're navigating the experience for the spectators and hopefully bumping into some psychic readers along the way. And after I did this piece, I mean, it really, you know, I just got so obsessed with, like more so than the technical elements of it, I got really obsessed with the idea of psychics, and that made me sort of like look more at how humans were fitting into my work. So after this piece, I got involved with an artist collective called Strikeware, and we started really using digital media to examine history. And I think that that's sort of what dovetailed into my residency at StudioWorks. So we did a sort of large scale exhibition on, sorry, I'm just moving this real quick. We did a sort of larger scale exhibition about the building that we were working with, the Peel Museum, and that museum's role as the first high school open to Black students in Baltimore City. And that really pushed me into archival work and into work that was like really just me like going through and just trying to follow like every single possible thread of research, trying to find out more about the first 9 students who graduated from this school. And in this case, they were tracked through newspapers, predominantly the Baltimore Afro-American. And that just got me really into the idea of newspapers and starting to use newspapers in my work. And that sort of begat this chalkboard piece. So this piece starts out completely black, and the entire thing is laser engraved with articles about each of these 9 graduates. And so people can approach it and rub chalk dust into the articles to expose them. How much bigger does that get? Not that much bigger. Like that. And, you know, so that was a piece I did in March of this year. So really right around the time I would have been applying for this residency. Another piece I took the lead on for this show was 8560. And this is more about like my interest in like, you know, this won't come up too much, but like I really love building my own custom electronics. And so this was a piece where viewers are sort of invited to gently lay their hands on these 2 identical desks, and one is heated to 85 degrees and the other is cooled to 60 degrees. And those are the temperatures above or below which Baltimore City schools will be dismissed for the day, because a huge number of city schools in Baltimore still don't have adequate HVAC or in desperate need of renovation for that HVAC. And this whole thing was a collaborative effort with 2 dear friends of mine, incredible artists, Christopher Koizar and Jeffrey Gangwish. So looking at the work that I did for StudioWorks, so I chose to focus my residency on the Quoddy Tides newspaper. Oh wow, that's weird. Okay. I can't see you guys anymore when I'm in full screen like this. It's odd. So I chose to focus my residency on the Quoddy Tides newspaper, and I really wanted to, you know, I noticed that it had started in 1968, and I thought that there was something sort of really interesting about the idea that it started in a history that's still living in a lot of ways, you know, that many people don't remember, but that is within living memory. And I really wanted to provide like a 2020 update to as many articles as I could find, you know. And for me, that was going to sort of take the form of an AR project, you know. So for many of the articles that I've been able to pick out, and this is sort of difficult to demonstrate over a laptop, but I'll try my best, right? So for many of the articles I've been able to pick out, like if you look at them with the camera on your cell phone through the app that I wrote, like they'll display something different as an overlay for the image, right? So here we're looking at the original first page of the Quoddy Tides in 1968. And you know, you have this map, and so for the printed version of, you know, this whole thing takes the form of an artist's book ultimately, and for the printed version, that's overlaid with a Google map here. And when you look at that map with the app on your phone, you can see actually like a topographical map, like a 3D sort of image, like showing the contours of the land. And so my ultimate goal, and I didn't finish this month, but my ultimate goal would be to have you know, some sort of augmented reality component or some sort of follow-up on each page. And I have a huge amount I'm now sitting, I put myself in a situation now where I'm sitting on a huge amount of information that will all go into the piece in some way, but which is like I'm still sort of struggling with the way to make that happen. That sort of does that information justice. So, you know, for like the second page, say, one of my main focuses was there's this new marine film, Maine's Harvesters of the Sea. This came out in 1968, and this article is about all of the awards that it won. So I couldn't find a copy of this film anywhere, so I contacted the Northeast Historic Film Archive, and they did have a copy. And they were also able to send me a pamphlet, which became sort of the backdrop for this article. And then, I guess my presentation program skips over video, but I do want to show a little bit of this video. Hope you guys can see this. Please speak up if you can.
We can't hear any of the volume though, Mollye, just FYI.
You can't hear the, oh shoot, okay.
You're missing the best part.
Thank you for letting me know. Brice knows how good the voiceover is on this video. So like there's this sort of it's like a half-hour film, and it goes into all of the different like all the different seafood that is harvested in Eastport, you know, from the ocean to mass production, to mass manufacturing, to your plate, and the fun recipes that you can use canned lobster in. So this was you know, so hopefully, you know, when you look at this with your phone, you'll be able to sort of watch the film for yourself. Another page that I was working with a little bit was the congratulations to Eastport's new newspaper, the Quoddy Tides. This is from the Merle Corporation. And among many other fish byproducts, marine byproducts, they produced pearlescent pigments. And so I did, you know, this is the updated artist's book page, which is a new look at the site of the Merle Corporation. And when you look at it through your phone, you can see some fish swimming through some tubes of iridescent pigment. A lot of these pigments were used in fluid dynamics studies, for instance, among other things, which I thought was really interesting, because it never occurred to me that, like, of course you need a way to see how fluids interact with other fluids. I've got some microscopy here of you know, like what the scales look like up close and what the crystals look like up close. They were also used a lot in like optical scanning. So a lot of the, you know, so the background here is like a patent application for like an optical scanning application. Moving on to the opinions page, Quoddy and the Sea. This is by Sumner T. Pike, who was a politician. He sat on the Atomic Energy Commission, among other things. He was a sort of self-made millionaire in the sardine industry. And he has a lot of opinions, including sort of pitching this idea for like the Quoddy tidal power project, which, you know, one of the first things I noticed when I got here was that the newest version of the Quoddy Times had like a tidal power project sort of being pitched again. He also comments in 1968 that that there's a present proposal for a port and oil refinery. You know, that became the Pittston oil refinery, which became, you know, a multi-decade news topic, and sort of struggle for this area. And the film archive sent me I guess actually you guys can't hear this either. Shoot. Okay. The film archive sent me some footage of some of the hearings for Pittston that were really, really, really interesting. So I'm looking forward to incorporating that into this page. At least one of the testimonies is musical, which is very exciting. Let's see, what's cooking? I'm looking forward to cooking this turkey chop suey recipe. Robinson, Pembroke Post Office, and Pleasant Point. I did a follow-up on all three of those. And so they're all sort of represented here. I don't know how much time I have, but without, you know, I don't want to spoil too much, but I'm really excited for these pages. But I did go and I visited Robinson, and I visited Pembroke Post Office. You know, Pleasant Point is no entry right now, but I did interview the Passamaquoddy, oh shoot, I'm forgetting his title, the Passamaquoddy historian, and had a really interesting conversation with him that I'm excited to incorporate into the project. For Robinson, I visited the church there, and you can see that the little model is incorporated into the page now. Moving on to Shade High School, I interviewed Sarah Bartlett, who was the valedictorian this past year, and was also the amazing Tides Institute intern. And she told me about the play that she wrote, Mercedes Circus. And so I actually happen to have a couple of circus-like things kicking around that are probably going to become part of this article ultimately. Also of note here, Explorience, a day-long event for high school students at the University of Maine. Students watched multimedia films, had lunch with electronic music in the background, participated in workshops using readily available materials to construct mobile sculptures. They created dynamic radio commercials, made colored movies and silkscreen prints. So I'm currently emailing with the Maine Arts and Humanities Commission, and they said that they are going to try to track something down for me, which is exciting because I didn't know if anybody would remember this one-day event in 1968. Don't have one for everything. S.L. Wadsworth and Son, of course, Eastport's oldest business. I have some footage from the Northeast Historic Film Archive from a documentary called In and Out of Maine, which is about young people who sort of leave Maine for a couple of years and return, and a member of the Wadsworth family who's had been working there for a long time is interviewed about his experience of sort of leaving and moving out for a little while and coming back in a couple of years. I also spoke to Dana at the PV Memorial Library and got a really cool interview of her. It was really insightful, and she also loaned me the only 2 books from this list that are still in circulation, The Lessons of History and The Wolves of Willoughby Chase. And they're highlighted here in the book page. And then for the last page, I just have a photo of the pier right now. And I think that's about what I've got. There you guys are. Oh, thank you.